I love the look that they're giving each other. We're both like, I don't know what that was, but sure.
Hey, we're not dead.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We are here to help train your eye so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. If you're wondering who are we to be analyzing these pros, Cass and I both have extensive training and experience in both partnered and solo dancing. So today we are taking a look at Kyle Red and Alyssa Glanville from
Spectacular
Spectacular.
2024.
We're mostly just going to be framing through. We kind of have a little bit of a topic, but probably not super heavy on it. But they are doing a lot of like kind of contact improv stuff in this with all the lifts and things. So we'll probably talk some about that as we.
Yeah. So contextually, for those who don't know, this was not an actual competition at Swingtacular. It was a pro show. Each dancer found out their partner the night before and they got to pick their music and they got to pick two songs. So this wasn't being judged, which allows us to see them more as artists and really enjoy themselves musically and technique wise and in their partnering. So looking at this, we're going to be looking at it through a different lens than we would if this were like a champion Jack and Jill spotlight that's judged. I will drop the link to the video up in the cards above. Go ahead and give it a watch, and then we will get to analyzing.
Only thing I want to say is a lot of this stuff would not be okay in a normal competition. So if you
Hence my
want to play
extensive preamble.
around with this stuff, it's like a late night or like a practice thing. This is not a competition.
Hmm. And I think what I'm going
Especially
to
on
try to do is to highlight what the the West Coast swing,
Boing.
but like the foundational structures are that are allowing certain things to happen because they're still happening in the context of like push pass whip compression tension. And we're gonna go to the screen share. Doodly 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 doo.
I do want to talk about this little opening real fast because if you have watched us for a while, if you've seen one of the episodes that Royston was on with us, he talks about how he likes to get his follows on the same page at the beginning of dances. So a lot of times he likes to do like a kind of mirroring thing. And that's, in my opinion, kind of what we're seeing here. We're trying to just make sure we're really on the same page and paying attention to each other. So they're kind of doing this mirroring thing, which is not like something you would generally see done. So
Mhm.
I just wanted to mention that because it is a good strategy.
Yeah. I like how they're breaking the rules and have their backs to us as the
Mm-hmm.
audience. Because that's usually in like in a competition environment, not something necessarily you can get away with.
Yeah. So another thing I also want to mention is this little arm styling that Alyssa does. Uh, there's not a lot of times that you'll see follows using just arm styling in order to play with the music. And it's a really good opportunity when you're trying to follow and you have a free arm to be able to add something extra in that is very musical. And so I love the fact that she does a little bit of a like snake back. And I feel like there's a lot of follows that don't really take the opportunity to style with their arms as far as like musicality goes. Obviously, we all learn to, do certain stylings with our arms, but like it's not necessarily a musical choice type styling. A lot of times it's just I'm doing this, so my arm needs to do this type styling.
Yeah, it's like follow through versus isolated intention.
Yeah.
Like knowing which one is appropriate at any given time is really important.
Yeah. So let's talk about this right here. We're talking about kind of that contact improv. And this is a kind of her taking an opportunity of the position that they are ending up in, right? Where they have, um, they're kind of in more of a closed position with the arms, and she's kind of leaning into like the chest to chest connection so that she doesn't have as much weight in the feet, so that she's able to do a little bit more um, kind of fun styling that is not quite as weighted. Uh, she's really just able to kind of press her weight into him and let her feet do their own thing.
It's a really interesting connection because it starts with actually forehead to forehead
Hmm.
and the chest to chest. They don't like quite completely connect until he's taking her weight.
Yeah.
Um, Instead, it's more of a compression on the left side of her body, the right side of his body in that closed position side.
Mhm.
This has like the vibes of Argentine tango to me,
Yeah,
and I
it
really
does.
like it. And they're not fighting to have like a pretty open hand connection. Like they've got, he's holding
Yeah.
on to her forearm, for example.
Yeah.
And the goal is just stability. And then they're both listening.
Hmm. Yeah. So she ends up kind of rotating from that like side to side more connection into that kind of more chest to chest.
And I want to highlight that, like, Kyle is allowing his connection on her right arm to move back past his left side. So that way she's not getting like compressed awkwardly in her right arm. Like her arm has somewhere to go.
Yeah.
So she isn't having to manage a changing frame while doing a weight supported shenanigans.
Hmm. Yeah, and she's not just like dropping into this either. The way that she's going into it, because she's kind of displacing the feet out from underneath her, it's like slowly moving into it. So he's slowly getting more weight than just her kind of dropping into something like a split or something like that.
Mhm. Then another point, like it's part of what I talked about earlier with like his right side, her left. But his bicep is like under her armpit. Essentially, his arm is really wrapped around her, so she can just kind of
Yeah.
like hang on her arm essentially once they transition it slowly into weight support.
Yeah.
So that's why they don't need as much chest to chest. It's because of
Yeah.
all of that support. If they were
Yeah.
just like forehead to forehead, there was like a hand on her back, that's how you die.
It is very much not stable.
Don't do that. Don't try that at home or anywhere. And then I really appreciate how when she comes up out of that split onto releve, she's not bouncing away from the forehead to forehead. Like, I don't know, it's kind of pretty uncommon in West Coast swing to dance forehead to forehead. It requires a lot of focus and concentration to maintain that.
Yeah.
Um, so I just wanted to highlight that.
Hmm. It's helpful in this situation that she's not actually moving apart from just kind of her feet are moving underneath her.
Mhm. I just love how here Kyle does like a sidestep to the
Hmm.
right here and manages to anchor on that foot. I
Mm.
think there was another video. I don't think it was with Kyle, but I think it was one of our more recent episodes, uh, where a leader does a weight transfer onto one foot, and the first half of that weight transfer is communicating one thing. So and the same thing is happening here, where it's like you can extend away from me into an anchor, and then the follow through of that weight transfer is anchoring back, and like it's so subtle, but it is so important. So we have a foot strike out to his right and in front of him. He's transitioning his weight forward onto that foot enough so Alyssa feels the movement to continue anchoring backwards. And then as he finishes, he shifts his weight back off of it to behind him and to his right. to initiate the one. And it's almost kind of like a but those details are so important. All right, so this is a push. This is a push break with so much variation in it. So first of all, it's like this modified closed position because it's not hand to hand, but it's not quite full closed position.
Yeah.
And then
Like
because,
shoulder to shoulder.
yeah, their arms are kind of like woven together.
Hmm.
Um, and because of that unique connection, Alyssa's left side stops moving forward first, and her right side continues moving past it. And that's where she's getting war, 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 where she's getting her shaping. Okay, that's where the shaping is coming from, right here. And then Kyle's just like on top of it. He's like, "Ooh, I'm gonna play with that."
Yeah.
And And this is how we get this really intense variation that I am betting no one has ever danced before. So we have our house, push break, up to code. We understand going from tension into compression and then back into tension. The follow is ending up on the same end of the slot where she started, and she's not passing the leader during the pattern. That is the bare bones of a push break.
Mhm.
And because of the unique connection point, and then her added flick here with her leg that's emphasizing her rotation forward to her left. Her right side is coming forward. And then Kyle never letting go of the weird intertwined arms,
Yeah.
which you might think makes it more complicated, but I think that actually simplifies things. He's not changing a variable. Instead,
Yeah.
he's introducing something else elsewhere to reduce the confusion. And like really, I would say yes, he's adding tension on the front of her right hip, but I would argue that's not the totality of what's actually leading her back. Um, it's kind of in his left hand and his right arm and his shift to his left foot are working in concert to redirect her. Because, like, she's in a compromised position right here. And if he were to actually, like, shove her hips through space back towards the end of the slot, she would have to retract that free leg really fast
Yeah.
to catch herself. Um, so he's giving like a more of like a kinetic transfer of energy than an actual moving her through space to redirect her.
Yeah. It's that absorb redirect.
Yeah. So here we have a variation on a telemark, which is just uh, a side pass on crack. That's the most simplified.
Great description.
Yeah. Yeah. But Kyle does these heel walks and somehow compresses into a forehead to forehead while he does it. What is this? A
Yeah.
witch. A witch, I say. Anyway, so how is he making this happen? So the first thing is he's keeping Alyssa really, really close. Once again, he's got her like waist in the nook of his elbow, which is helping him have not only the visual impact of how far away she is, but he has that proprioceptive feedback. She's not going to get any farther away than the length of his upper arm, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing he's doing is he's staying pitched back in order to do these heel walks. So you can see how he is way, well, come on, pen, way over here. And this is the point where his foot is touching the floor. And he isn't over that point until here. And his toe hasn't even hit the ground. So he's really using the muscles on the front of his ankle to keep that. What's the,
Flexed.
thank you, the flexed. What are words? And it's that pitch back, kind of like a brace step or a post for a leader, that is allowing him to delay his weight transfer over that foot. And that's what's giving him time to seek forehead to forehead.
I do want to add that because his feet are really pointed in one direction, so he's really having to kind of rotate through his spine in order to kind of create this and move through it.
Really helpful that he has like a vertical text along his spine
Hmm.
because you can see it straight, curved.
Yep.
So handy. It's like rotoscoping for dancers. Yeah. All right, we're going to talk about the third dimension, not the fifth dimension, but the third one. Because this is another, like, they're just using basic West Coast Swing concepts, but they have a slightly different connection. And he's wanting to rotate her slightly differently than, like, quote unquote, normal. Um, and what he does is because he has her left arm and 2 points of contact, one with his right arm further up her arm, and with his left arm around her forearm and wrist. What he does is he wants her to rotate to her right and come towards him really quickly. And because he's kind of got this locked, almost like a tricycle frame relationship to her upper body, it's like steering a tricycle. Don't give me that face. I know my metaphors are bad. Just
I just had to think on what you were trying to explain for a second. It's like tricycle. Okay, gotcha.
so he isn't simply bringing her left side forward down the slot towards him. He's bringing it forward down the slot and across the slot. See how he's like really shaping it across his own front? And that's what's allowing her left foot, which to start out is like on this floorboard, to end up on a floorboard that's actually further this way than where her right foot started. And this is one of the things that I see get lost in translation in Kyle and Sarah's wonderful workshops because Sarah is so tiny that shift in the lateral dimension across the slot can be so slight because of how small she is. If you don't know to look for it, you're not going to see it. And then when you go to lead a follow who is not wonderful tiny mama Sarah Van Drake, you're leading like me, for example. We feel like we've been flattened by one of those like concrete roller trucks or whatever. We're just all like so that third dimension is really important. And this is an excellent example of him using it exquisitely to just be like, you're gonna be over here now, and I'm also gonna be over here, and this is gonna be so cool. Look at that. I'm now gonna let you take over.
To talk about the
Yeah. He's
ending of this.
like the leader's job is to just like be stable and counter the weight.
Yeah. So this is interesting because Alyssa is, yes, technically choosing how to go into this, but it's kind of being chosen for her based on how they're entering into this. Because as he's kind of rotating her and then grabbing her arm to toss, like she has one foot up and then one foot is kind of stuck behind her. So then naturally she's being kind of accelerated through. So instead of um like keeping the feet together because she already has her feet kind of split apart, it's kind of naturally just going to swing that one side through as because he's connected to her right side. So as he kind of pulls her, she's kind of falling down diagonally, and that's just going to swing that left side forward. So she's just letting all of her left side kind of go with it. So she is technically choosing this position, but it's kind of just where she was already at and then how he kind of led her and like accelerated her kind of down a little bit. So she's choosing to make this a pretty position.
Hmm.
But it wasn't like it wasn't she didn't have a ton of options that she could do out of the position she was in, is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Where his left hand is obscured by her hair. Is it just kind of like stabilizing her neck? Is that what's going on?
It's not exactly, it's kind of there.
It's just kind of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm just like, I know he's not hurting her because I know he knows not to do that and he's doing it right. But I'm like, your hair's in the way, Alyssa. I want to know what's going
Well,
on.
so because of the positioning that they end up in, there's not much he can do with that hand.
Hmm.
Um, he's, I think he
Oh,
kind of
here it is. It's like on the
hooked
side of her
over.
neck.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I was gonna
Okay.
say. He has it kind of hooked so that
Yeah.
he kind of has like the base of her neck. But just because of the position that she gets into where she's kind of rotated to the floor, there's not too much that you can do with that arm other than probably literally what he's doing, where he kind of has a hold of that base of the neck. But even still, once she kind of rotates this way, he can't really do much with that because
Yeah.
now it's past the point where he can kind of like almost, I don't want to say pull, but that's kind of what he's doing, right? Is he's trying to control it a little bit.
Hmm.
So it's kind of, it's not so much he's pulling, but just kind of preventing her from moving further away
Yeah.
more so. So it would feel a little bit like a pull, just in the sense that you're trying to keep something more towards you.
Yeah.
Um,
If you've ever
but
been on a tilt-a-whirl, the wall behind you is doing what his hand is doing, preventing you from yeeting into the stratosphere.
yes.
Pressure because there is centripetal force, not because the wall is coming towards you.
Yeah, yeah, because in the position that she's in, like you don't want to do too much, put too much pressure on the neck.
Hmm.
So it's really like he has it specifically kind of hooked right at the base, and he's kind of just preventing it from moving really far away. Um, but like I said, there's not too much she can do, especially once she kind of slides past him, because then you can no longer really have that hand position where you're kind of able to prevent it from moving super far away from you. Because it's then because he has one side of her neck, right? And so once it moves past the point where he can kind of, like I said, but not pull, but kind of prevent, um, then you can't do anything once she's kind of past that point.
Hmm.
And that's then when she kind of takes over and gets herself up, really.
And then, just physics wise, I want to highlight how, in order for them to get the slightly extra rotation, see how she like comes up a little bit when she changes her leg position, and Kyle's helping her come up a little bit. That up allows another down to happen to get
Mhm.
more acceleration into another ride, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is quite an interesting uh weight support,
Hmm.
I guess that's what you want to call it. Because she's just like ragdolling
I know.
uh
The
in a pretty way.
strength that she would need to have in her right shoulder to do that, because she's going from this position to a more extended above her head position. And that's where like the majority of her weight is. It's really impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's distributed. I mean, she has her feet touching the ground, right?
Hmm.
So it's not all in her like upper body area, but a lot of it is.
Yeah.
just because of the way she's grazing over the floor. So this is kind of another one of those. So we get into kind of contact improv that goes into a weight supported thing.
Hmm.
This one is interesting though, because you can like very much see where she realizes she's in a position that she could do a weight support movement. And then she's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Hmm. Like so far, up until this point, this looks like totally like normal, high level West Coast swing. Some arm shenanigans, a bit of a push break situation. Um, but
Kyle's,
as soon as this like redirection finishes, they're both like, let's not go anywhere.
yeah.
Let's do more arms.
The face that Kyle's making when he like wraps or brings it over her. Real funny.
So we have a face loop followed by a rotation into closed position. And like in like a standard pattern, this might be another redirect out.
Hmm.
But instead of either of them initiating that redirection, either him leading it or her being like, I want to get away from you. That's just a joke. Uh, that wasn't clear. Let's stay here.
You say that because I didn't react because I was totally thinking about what I was gonna say about what she's doing with her like upper body and lower body. I was like half listening.
I decided to stay here. And it's just really fun because like her left foot is way out in front of her, like in a standard West Coast swing, like the way you finish that is you get up over that foot.
Mhm.
But they're like, no, we're gonna put the sofa in the hallway.
Yeah, the other option would
Take the
be
metaphors away
for
from me.
to bring that foot back underneath her. But instead, she chooses to leave the feet and rotate the upper body only. And so that's what's kind of putting her in this position where she realizes she can do a weight support, right? Because she's kind of hooking up over his arm. And because she already has her feet in this like extended away from her position, she doesn't really have to do much in order to kind of drop into a weight sport.
All right, and then this is another example of the third dimension that I was talking about. So, her left foot is here. He first starts by getting her weight over that foot, but then shifts her across the slot to over here. And it's kind of like an arced transition between the two. So there aren't any harsh corners or anything.
Yeah.
But instead of trying to like get her right foot out here in line with her left foot, he's curving around the slot. Very similar to how you get a follow out of the slot in a telemark.
Hmm.
And he's doing that by driving his right side. Why is my pen not working? In that same shape. So down the slot, across the slot.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things where it may be simpler as a leader to think about I'm just trying to do a 180 rotation on my left foot. I'm trying to get over my left foot, rotate 180, and land on my right. And if you do that as one piece, you will lead the follow to do it correctly.
Yeah.
So, um, if figuring out in general, I think there are like two kind of ways to think about leading. It's like, what am I doing? And that results in the follow doing the correct thing. Or sometimes this is how my brain works. It helps me to know what am I trying to get the follow to do?
Yeah.
And then what I do makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's a chicken or the egg. But sometimes chicken makes sense to some people and egg makes sense to other people. So
Yeah.
something to keep in mind.
I mean, you could also think of it as just one unit.
I don't know. That in my brain, that makes it more complicated.
To me, when I look at the like weight supported things, that's how I think of it.
Okay, what? Okay, now I'm looking for the chicken or the egg. What actually happens first? I love being able to frame through stuff.
I think what happens is she kind of sticks her leg out as he's kind of deciding that he's going to step over her because she's already kind of bent.
Yeah, yeah, because he's lifting
And then
his
he's like,
leg,
oh, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen.
and then she sneaks her leg through, and he's like, ah.
Uh-huh.
And
And the
like
face that
it,
he's making when it comes to the camera.
like it doesn't completely like nobody dies because of how stable he is
No,
on
yeah.
that left leg.
But I don't think it was quite what he was envisioning
No,
initially.
because for a hot second, this looks real wrong.
This looks like not exactly what we were going for.
If I were a sadistic YouTuber, that would be the thumbnail, but I'm not going to do that to them because I adore them. Kyle's
Yeah, this
watching this.
face that he's making, he's like, okay, guess we're doing this.
But like he does what all good leaders do is he's like prioritizing our safety.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's seeking connection and stability. So you can see he switches from his left hand being under to over,
Hmm.
and he's probably doing an adjustment on the right side too that we just can't see.
Yeah, and he also, because the way that he's kind of falling into this, it's just all the weight is going onto his right side, and it's kind of at an angle. So he like immediately shifts so that he brings that left side up underneath as well.
Yeah. And like this has to travel through space. His right side has to come left relative to us, left across the screen.
Yeah.
So he's rotating to his left and bringing his right side forward. That has to happen because if he were to just drop it like it's hot right here, that would be hot, stinky cat dookie because he would just like sit on her. Like, no, we're not even, we're going to move on from that image. Traveling through space is necessary for this to work. And then, like you said, he adjusts his left foot to be
Mhm.
to finish stability. And it looks like his right hand is on her ribs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she also is helping because she's kind of wrapping the arms while her
Yeah.
free arm kind of back around.
Yeah. She's got his leg.
Mhm.
Safe.
Then we have another.
This reminds me of the Jordan and Sarah dance we actually analyzed with Sarah,
Oh yeah,
where all
yeah,
they did was hug and he stood up straight and she came off the ground.
yeah, yeah. So this one is interesting because she realizes that they have pretty much full like back to chest contact, and she's kind of he has his arm already wrapped around her.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, okay, I'm gonna pull my legs up into this. And the reason that the transition works so smoothly from her being on her own power to then kind of having him move her is just because she is pulling her feet in, right? So she's not leaving the extra weight extended far away from them. She's bringing
Mm-hmm.
everything in so that they're more one piece.
I do love how they like start the same
Yeah.
in a comedic way. Her face right there is just so great.
She's like, I think this might have been what I did. I'm not really sure. Don't remember exactly, but it was something like this.
I'm gonna talk about a pet peeve of mine because Kyle's doing something beautifully. Because you know when you have a leader and by like looking at them, you can tell they want you to move with them in
Yeah.
a direction. Either they're in front of you, leading you away, or they're like behind you, leading you like there's some sort of we're both going in the same direction at the same time
Yeah.
kind of situation.
Yeah.
When they're doing, you can see that, but there is no feeling in the hand whatsoever that they're not like trying to actually lead you anywhere. And it's like one of the most gross feelings. So here's an example. once we get to this point right here, Kyle is moving that way. He's doing it at a leisurely pace, but he's continuing to lead Alyssa to also travel with him. There isn't this weird, like, paradoxically nothing in the hand.
Yeah.
Like, we're technically touching each other, but there's actually no information going through. It's like, remember when they originally made phone lines so clear you didn't think you were actually on the phone with anyone if they weren't talking, and then they added noise back in? It's like that uncanny feeling of the phone line being too quiet.
Yeah.
It's just like, huh. So if you're wanting a follow to travel through space, lead them to travel through space. Thank you.
One of the reasons that
Oh no, I'm so sorry, Kyle. I did not intend to stomp on that.
see what I said at the beginning where I was like, they both have a lot of moments where they're like, I think this
So
is
good.
what we're doing.
This is so good. Could you imagine like ballroom if they were allowed to do that with their faces? I want to see that.
That would be funny. Uh, I was going to say something about what they were doing. So I was going to talk about really fast. Because when he's moving past her, they have their hands dropped. But it's not just like a drop where there's nothing happening between them. There's still a little bit, because there's some distance between them, there's going to be a little bit of tension.
Yeah. And they're offset. Oh, I went too far.
We went
Okay.
way back to the
Cool.
beginning.
So he's slightly ahead of her,
Yeah.
and that's really important. If they were perfectly next to each other, side by side, you wouldn't be able to lead either person forward or backwards. I mean, you
Yeah.
technically could, but it would probably involve some sort of shaping. So, like, there'd be that kind of shaping, this kind of shaping.
Mhm.
But if you want to, like, I can't do that with my hands right now. I'm gonna hurt myself. But you need to be off.
Yeah. This is more like if you're holding hands with somebody and when you're walking somewhere and like you stop and they keep going, you're going to
Mhm.
keep going with them.
Yeah.
That's what this is, more so than like a normal connection for West Coast swing.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually have a hold of her with one of his hands.
Let's see. He's got left to left under her armpit to make a nice comfortable neck roll. And then he's seeking her other shoulder with his right
Mhm.
hand. And then he is choking himself.
Yeah.
Oh man, I forget which of their routines it was, but there is this one Kyle and Sarah routine where at one point he has his hands crossed behind her head and has like her head in his hands, and then he does a turn, leaving his
Yep.
hands there.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I
Yeah,
don't remember which one it
it's
is.
so good. It is so good. I tried doing that once as an experiment. Ow.
That's
My shoulders weren't about it for some reason.
you need to be more than hypermobile to do that.
Apparently. Kyle, are you one of us? Are you a zebra? We'll ask you next time we have you on. Anyways.
So like what I was saying was he doesn't actually end up having like a hand like holding on to her.
Hmm. Like you,
So
and she lets go with her left hand.
mhm.
So he's able to like seek it, but she's just like
Yeah, so his left arm is all the way over here, and he does not have a hold of her with his right arm. She's just leaning on him basically, and he's like trying to get to her, but nope. So, uh, I wanted to talk about this because this is basically it has to do with her leaning and him pressing into that lean
Mhm.
because he literally does not have a hold on.
Do not try this.
No, this is like a she's kind of leaning over the arm. And so she's kind of hooked in terms of like her shoulder. But like he doesn't actually have a grip on her for most of it.
But yeah, he's like trying to get his bicep under her, I think
Yeah.
is his thought process. He's like, oh no.
Yeah. So he ends up just kind of pushing her back on top of her own feet rather than like her having her feet placed and him kind of moving her up over. He's just kind of shoving, which is probably why he ends it with that face where he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I love the step together he does.
That looked like a oops. I kind of meant to do that. We're just gonna make it look really intentional.
Yeah. I know he's done this before, but he slowly looks at the audience and goes, I led that.
Yeah.
Him and Ben both do that.
I love the look that they're giving each other. We're both like, I don't know what that was, but sure.
Hey, we're not dead.
Yeah.
This one is stable.
Yeah.
God, I half expect him to like grab back behind her knees and do the classic like Lindy lift.
Yeah. I love that Alyssa ends it and her face is like, sure.
There was like one very small window of my West Coast swing where I was like at the height of my eating disorder, so like not a good time. But because of that, I was liftable. And I did not like that one bit. No.
It is something that you really have to get used to. Because
Yeah, that is an acquired taste.
it's one of those things like when you have a really good connection, a lot of the leads will be like, ooh, let's play with this. And then you just end up not on your feet.
Yeah. Like I can totally see myself doing that as a leader. Be like, ooh.
Oh, God.
The physics of it makes sense. It just kind of
Yep.
happens
Yeah.
and it's not that much work.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's typically what I come across with leads. Occasionally, they'll just really put in the effort. But usually it feels pretty seamless transitioning, but it's something you have to get used to where you're like, my feet are on the floor, now my feet are not on the floor. Cool.
Mhm.
So he's really kind of sending her up over his back, is
Mhm.
basically what's happening.
And he's waiting to bring that handhold past his head to his other shoulder at the end of her rotation.
Hmm.
Cannot emphasize how important that is. Because if he were to start pulling that hand past his head, like here, it would pull her off her center and she would fall into him.
Yeah.
So he's waiting until it's safe to do that. And then they've got a really strong handhold here, and he's got his arm around her back and his hand stably on
Hmm.
her ribs. So like night and day different from the
Yeah.
last weight support we saw.
And this one is a very much like because of the way that they have their hands, it makes it super easy because he is a little bit taller than she is.
Yeah, he
So
just
just
like stands up
naturally
straight.
her having, yeah, her having her arm like hooked up over him is just going to, if she leans into it, it'll naturally bring the weight off of her feet. So
Mhm.
it's easy to then kind of swing her feet around. And that's basically what ends up happening. Because this is a very much like almost full body contact thing that's happening
Mhm.
just because of the way that you have to get around where the feet basically hook around um and the hips have to go up and back.
Right here in particular, it looks like she's defying gravity.
Yeah,
But
it
like the
does.
combination of him supporting her standing up straight and then her like going into a pike position
Yep.
essentially just
Yep. Mhm.
levitates. Where'd gravity
Under
go?
the influence of gravity.
It's like, I got your nose, but I got your gravity.
It's a very well done weight supported trick.
Yeah.
And I love that the look that they give each other after they get out of it was like, that was fun. Look, and not like, oh, we made yep, made it through.
There's like a range of like, oh, that was cool kind of surprise, and like the Hagrid shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah.
Let us know if there's any videos you would like for us to talk about or
Mhm.
analyze.
Yep. And then just one quick PSA. We are going to be closing our Patreon because life has just gotten too
Yeah,
busy. We
yeah.
started this show and Patreon at the very beginning of 2020 when COVID started. And we had a lot of time on our hands. And now we just cannot meet those demands because we're too busy. So what we're going to do for all of you wonderful Patreon subscribers is we're going to be offering each of you a free Zoom lesson with Alicia and myself. So look out for the announcement for that inside Patreon. And we're also hoping to be able to allow you to stay in that library of everything we've created over the past 5 years and still have access to all of it just without having to continue to pay for it. It'll just be legacy in that library. Um, and yeah, thank you all so much for your support. And if you want to continue to support us, just buy our t-shirts because they're hilarious. If you're not on Patreon, get a lesson from us the old-fashioned way. Throw money in our faces. We love doing personalized video analysis lessons on Zoom.
Yep.
It is like crack.
It is fun. So
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
we will see you all at some point later.